In this month's episode of Knit to Crochet, basically I'm taking a knit stitch and I'm showing you 3 different ways to crochet it in a way that makes it look like the knit stitch. Now this is the first episode, so today we're going to be exploring the basic knit stitch. Hello, my name is Sig and this is Crochet and Fiber. And you of course are always welcomed here and we are glad to have you. So don't forget to hit the subscribe bar, like button, and notification bells. This is an episode I have monthly. This is going to be the first month of it. So we're going to progress. Also through the course of the month, you're going to have a crochet pattern or review, an actual crochet tutorial, something usually quick and simple, but fun, useful, and skill building, or at least I hope so for you. And then also a monthly episode of what I like to call yarn talk. Basically, I show you yarn hauls. We talk maybe a little bit about history, talk about some of the tools we might use, anything that has to do with actual crochet, but sort of sits more on the periphery that doesn't always get a lot of attention. So if any of these monthly videos sounds like something you're interested in, we're here for you. Okay, so let's just go ahead and get started. So I've started my 3 swatches that you can see here. I have this one right here is done with a Tunisian stitch. Now Tunisian stitches, or at least the Tunisian knit stitch, looks very much like your standard knit stitch when knitting. And we're all learning together because quite frankly, I don't know how to knit, but I do kind of know what the stitches look like, and my goal is to broaden my skill base, and hopefully you're interested in doing that as well. And learning the different techniques that give us more a knitted look for those times when we really want a knitted look in our project, but just either don't want to or just simply don't know how to knit. And so again, Tunisian. And the fabric is thicker than your standard knitted fabric. So this is like a great piece for if you're making a warmer sweater or something that you want to have a little more structure to, something that's going to be warmer, a little more durable. Yeah, you know, so Tunisian's really good for that. The next stitch or technique I'll be showing you today is nooking. So this is a nooking piece, and it is very much what you would expect a knitted piece to look like. It's pretty much the same thickness. It has exactly the same look. It essentially is knitting, but with a crochet hook. And I'll show you how to achieve this. Basically the same thickness, much like a knitted piece. You're certainly going to use less yarn than you normally would on a similar piece that was either crocheted using a standard technique or crocheted doing Tunisian style. And then the third knit look that I'm going to be showing you how to do today is the waistcoat stitch. Now the waistcoat stitch is achieved using your standard crochet hook and crochet technique basically. Now the waistcoat stitch basically is a knit look stitch, looks like a knitted stitch. And it's thick, it's a nice thick sturdy piece. It lays very flat. So this is a piece, or this is a stitch that I particularly like in terms of if you want something that has kind of that knit stitch, but it's tapestry, so you're doing an image or something along those lines, and you want it to be or follow more the crochet kind of approach to a tapestry stitch than a knitted piece, but you want to be able to crochet it and have the knitted look. No, lots of words, but you know what I'm trying to say. Then this waistcoat stitch is really a great stitch for that. Now I'm not going to be showing you how to do any color changes today, but I am going to show you how to do a flat waistcoat stitch as well. So those are going to be my 3 stitches I show you today. I'm going to show you Tunisian, I'm going to show you Nooking, and then I'm also going to show you the waistcoat technique. All 3 of these are used with a crochet hook, albeit the hooks are going to look a little different. If you want to know more about the hooks, because you just don't really know that much about the different hooks that are available to you, I will put a video I did explaining the different hooks that are used out there that you might use more often depending on what technique or tradition of crochet you happen to be interested in. So I'll just go ahead and put that link to that video below in the comments box, and then also in the description box, and you can just watch that if that's something you're interested in learning more about. So for these videos, if this is something you want to continue to do and follow, I am using a size G hook for everything. So basically it's a 4mm hook. So I will be using a 4mm Tunisian hook, or a 4mm standard crochet hook, or a 4mm size Nooking hook, or also known as a locker hook. So let's go ahead and start with the Tunisian hook. And just quickly, before I forget, this is the size hook I'm going to use for each monthly tutorial with regards to these knit look crochet techniques we'll be exploring. So for the Tunisian, I'm going to go ahead and make my slip knot. And for this demonstration, I'm only going to chain 10. Now, you can chain however many you want in terms of your foundation chain, but this is what I'm going to do for demonstration purposes. So I'm going to start by just making my standard chain. So 1, 2, 9, and 10. Just like so. And then I'm going to begin like I would normally begin a standard Tunisian simple stitch, right? So this is going to be my first loop that's already on the hook, and then I'm going to insert my hook into the second chain from the hook. I'm going to yarn over, I'm going to pull up a loop, and I'm going to continue doing just that all the way down. So this is my next stitch. I'm going to insert my hook, yarn over, and pull up the loop. I'm going to do this for each chain stitch, and when I've finished this row, I am going to have 10 loops on my hook. And this is one of those stitches where you want to try and keep your tension a little on the looser side. So it doesn't have to be super loose, but you don't want it too tight either. Okay, so now as you can see, I have 10. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, and 10. Now I need to bring this back. Okay, so for those of you who don't know, the row that we just completed is called a forward pass. Now, as I come back to complete row 2, that's going to be referred to as a return pass. So I'm going to do a return pass, and I'm going to yarn over. I'm going to pull my hook through just the first loop. Then I'm going to yarn over. I'm going to pull my yarn through the next 2 loops. Yarn over and pull my yarn through the next 2 loops. Yarn over and continue pulling my yarn through the next 2 loops until I've completed the return pass, or my second row. Just like that. So now I have something that looks like this. And my first loop on my hook is basically going to act as my first stitch. And I'm going to begin row 3, which is going to be my new forward pass. Now, for this stitch, I'm going to take my hook. I'm going to pull that out just for a minute. And I'm going to insert my hook right here and then through the piece. So I'm going to put it right here behind this front bar, And then I'm going to slip it to the rear of my work, and I'm going to yarn over. I'm going to pull that loop through. And now I have 2 loops on my hook. So I'm going to do it again. I'm going to put my hook right through from the right side to the back of my work, just on this side of the bar. Yarn over, I'm going to pull that through. I'm going to do that with each stitch in this forward pass. So again, insert my hook right there from the right side, going to the back of my work of that front bar right there. And I'm going to pull my loop through. I'm going to do it again. I'm going to continue to do just that for the length of this row. And then when I get to that very last stitch, I'm going to insert my hook, but I'm also going to catch that little short, I don't know if you can see it, that little short bar right there in the back. I'm going to catch that. I'm going to insert my hook right behind that, right into that. And I'm going to pull this up. And then I'm going to go ahead and proceed to do my return pass just as before. So yarn over and pull it through that first loop. Then yarn over and pull it through the next 2 loops. Yarn over, pull through the next 2 loops. Yarn over, pull it through the next 2 loops. So on and so forth. Next 2 loops. All the way until I've completed this row 4. So you can already start to see it take shape. So I'm going to go and I'm going to do row 5. I already have my first stitch on my hook. I'm going to take my hook and I'm going to insert it right here between and behind this front bar. I'm going to put it to the back of my work. Yarn over, I'm going to pull that yarn through. Again, I'm going to put that behind that bar, that next bar, yarn over and pull that yarn through. I'm going to continue to do this for row 5, my forward pass. And as you can see, it's starting to give me that knitted look. And I've almost completed row 5. And again, I'm going to bring my hook right through this last bar, and I'm going to make sure that I pick up that little short bar that's sitting right behind it, yarn over, and I'm going to have my 10 loops on the hook. I'm going to yarn over for my return pass. This is row 6. Yarn over and bring it through that first loop. Then yarn over and bring it through 2 loops after that. Yarn over, 2 loops, yarn over, 2 loops. Continue just like that until you've completed your return pass, which is your row 6. So, and that is all there is to it. And then of course you have this beautiful knitted fabric piece that makes great tapestry fabric, or a nice thicker warm sweater. It's good for blankets too. Tunisian stitches are really great for making nice cozy heavier weight afghans for sure. Okay, let's move on to the next one. Okay, so this is another great stitch for color work in terms of tapestry work. And this works a little different. So the waistcoat stitch is usually worked in the round. So when worked as a flat, like the example that I showed you, you're going to kind of treat it similar to the way you would treat crocheting using a mosaic technique, in that I am going to start my piece, but instead of turning my work, I'm going to cut my yarn and I'm going to start again back at the beginning, and I'll show you what I mean. So I'm going to start, I'm going to make my slip knot, and then I'm going to chain 10 just like before. So 1, 2, and 10. So what I'm going to have to do is now I'm going to have to cut that. And I have my foundation chain. Next, I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to take my yarn and I'm going to begin again. So in that first stitch, I'm going to just go ahead and I'm going to tie myself in there like, you know, you normally might. And I'm just going to pull that yarn aside. And then I'm going to make a single crochet into that same stitch. And then I'm going to single crochet each stitch after that. So that's going to be my second, my third, my fourth. Okay, so now I've finished my chain, which is my foundation chain, right? And then I've completed row 1. So again, I'm going to go ahead, I'm going to cut my yarn. I'm going to slip stitch, tie that off, and I'm going to go back to the beginning of my work. So again, I've got my piece. And I'm going to go ahead, I'm going to tie it in. I'm going to make my single crochet in that same stitch. Now, the next thing I'm going to do is I'm going to go to the next single crochet right here. And you see where we've got the kind of the V there in front? I want to go right in between that V. So, what I'm going to do, I'm going to take my hook and I'm going to insert it right in between those legs. I'm going to yarn over, I'm going to pull my yarn through, yarn over, and complete my single crochet. And then I'm going to do it again with the next set of legs that look like V's. I'm going to slip that right through the center of those legs, yarn over, pull my yarn through, I'm going to create my next single crochet. I'm going to continue to do it just like that until I've completed my second row. All right, so this is one of those stitches you want to pay attention to because sometimes it can be a little hard to see those two legs that you want to go in between. So I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to continue on as before until I have my 10 stitches completed. And then when you've completed that second row, again, I'm going to cut my yarn. I'm going to then make my slip stitch, basically making a slip knot. And I'm going to come back here and begin this again. Again, finding that space between those two legs. And in this case, this is where I'm going to tie my work into. And I'm making my single crochet in that same stitch. Sorry, it's a little fiddly right here. I had a couple of things going on that are distracting me. I apologize. All right, yarn over, and then I make my next single crochet. And then again, I continue on as before. But now once you get past that second row, your stitches become much easier to see. Sometimes they're a little difficult when they're coming off that foundation row. And just as before. Now, this is a stitch I really like in terms of tapestry work. The piece itself lays relatively flat, which is really nice. You get a nice square or rectangular piece, geometrically speaking. Everything structurally speaking wise does not require a lot of blocking or messing with. And then also, by virtue of the fact that you're just doing a standard crochet stitch all the way through, you can really hide those colors you're working with. So you can make, in fact, this is one of my more favorite stitches in terms of making a standard tapestry piece. If I want it to have more a knitted look, but I want the strength and the structure of crochet, this waistcoat stitch really works well for me. So, and as you can see on this swatch here that I have, and these make great, not only tapestry pieces, but they make a great placemat as well. Again, you have a nice structured piece. In the end, you're either going to hide this in whatever binding you choose to use, or you're just simply going to weave in these ends. So yeah, this does make this particular stitch a little work heavy in the sense that you have a lot of weaving to do, but it really can be worth the extra effort. And really, this waistcoat stitch with all this extra fringe to deal with, or you can just leave the fringe as it is too. That works out well too, depending on what you're making. So now working this in the round, and we'll talk about working the waistcoat stitch in the round, you won't have any of this going on, but we'll talk about that next month. Okay, now let's talk about the nooking hook. So this is a nooking hook. This is the preferred nooking hook I like to work with. So basically this is a locker hook. They call it a nooking hook, but this is more often seen and used in terms of rug making. And the reason why I like the locker hook as my nooking hook is because it has a slimmer profile and a deeper neck. And as you can see, what makes this nooking hook different than a standard crochet hook is going to be the eye at the end of this hook that holds my yarn or cording or shoelace, whatever it is you're using as your cording, basically. So now for the nooking, I'm going to start just like all the other ones before it. I'm going to make my slip knot. And then I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to chain 10. So I've got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, and 10. And I'm going to start it much like I would start with a Tunisian. So what I want to do is I want to end up with 10 loops on my hook. And so what I'm going to do is I'm going to insert I've got my first loop, and then I'm going to insert my hook into the next chain. And I'm just going to pull that next loop through. And I want to keep these loops relatively loose as well. And then again, I'm going to continue with that same process all the way down the length of my row. And as I go, I like to just give it a little tug, right? That little tug just gives it that little extra bit of looseness that I'm looking for. So with the Tunisian, you can get away with it being a little tighter than looser, but you always want to still have it looser, maybe by a smidge, or a little more than that than what you would normally crochet with. And then for nooking, you want it maybe another smidge looser than what you would normally do if you were making a Tunisian crochet piece. Okay, so I've got my 10 loops, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, and 10. So the next thing I'm going to do is I'm going to take my work and I'm going to pull it through, but not all the way through, because I want my piece, which I'm turning, and I still want a bit of cording hanging off the other end because I don't want to lose the loops that I have on my cording. Now this is where it can get a little tricky. So for this particular stitch, I want my yarn to sit in the back of my work. I'm going to take my hook and I'm going to hook it over the top of my loop and then bring it in like that. And then I'm going to yarn under. So I'm going to grab that yarn under, and I'm going to pull it through. And that's going to be my first stitch. And that's the knit stitch in Nooking. So again, I'm going to take my hook to hook it over the top of that next loop. I'm going to do kind of a little bit of a twist, and I'm going to put my hook towards the back of my work. I'm going to yarn under, and then I'm going to pull that loop through, just like that. Now I'm going really slow because I noticed that the instructions on this can be really confusing if you can actually find an old school Nooking book. And those can be a little difficult because most of the books on Nooking are actually written in German. It was a real big thing in German. I think you could get it in Japanese as well. It was quite a big thing in Japanese. In fact, I believe the Japanese are actually credited with kind of being the ones who, I don't know if they actually discovered the technique, but they certainly are the ones who brought it to our attention and gave us the Nooking hook and gave us the basic instructions for it, you know, that I'm aware of. And the Germans loved it. They actually have books on it, but you know, they're not in English. I don't know that it ever really took off for us in this country. I mean, there are some books on it. There are a few books. And then also, I wonder too, if, you know, the books are actually more like pamphlets. But I'm wondering if they didn't really take off, not because we needed more Nooking books, but once you got the basic techniques down, you just bought yourself a knitting book, and there you, and away you went. You just used your Nooking technique and followed knitting instructions. So I've got a video coming out pretty soon where I'm actually making a pair of knitted socks using the Nooking technique. And they're looking like straight knitted socks, as far as I can tell. So I'm early in on making that video, and I will be showing it to you next week. And yeah, so I'm wondering if that's just kind of what happened is once you learn how to do your various Nooking stitches, you can just take that and pick up a knitting instruction book and away you go. I'm still exploring that. There's not a lot of information, but I've decided I really love the Nooking process, even though the hooks are a little difficult. You kind of have to make do unless you can actually find something. Yeah, it's a whole thing. And there's more about that in my video on hooks that I have down in the description box below. Okay, so now I have my second row complete. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to go ahead, I'm going to pull the cord loose from where it was before, from the very beginning, from that first row. And then I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to pull my hook through. And of course, I'm going to bring it down towards the end of my cording. I'm going to turn my work. And now I have the back of the work facing me. And basically for this, I'm going to do the purl stitch, which would normally be called basically a purl stitch. And for that, I want my yarn in front. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to take my hook, I'm going to insert it from the back to the front, basically from right to left if you're right-handed. And for this, I'm going to yarn over. And then I'm going to hook my hook around. And I'm going to pull it through, and that's going to give me my purl stitch. So again, I want my yarn in front. I'm going to insert my hook from back to front, yarn over, and I'm going to pull that yarn through like that. So I want my yarn in front. I want to insert my hook from the back to the right, from the right to the left, going through what they would call the back of the stitch, yarn over, and then hook my yarn and pull that through. So put my yarn forward, bring my hook through the back, right to left, yarn over, and then pull that yarn through. I'm going to do that for each stitch. It's basically the purl stitch for the back of this swatch. Now, if I were working in the round, which I'm not, and I'll show you more of this next month when we do these pieces in the round, I wouldn't need to mess with doing the purl. But because I'm doing this on a flat swatch, I need to make my purl stitch in the back to give me that nice, what you would expect to see with a knitted piece. So again, on that last stitch, insert my hook right to left, yarn over, hook that yarn, and pull it through. Okay. So now I'm going to go ahead, I'm going to pull that cord back through. And then I'm going to take my work and I'm going to pull it through my cord, right? I'm going to turn my work around. And then I've got the front side of my work facing me again. And just as before, now I want to do my knitted stitch for the front part of this swatch. So now I want my yarn to sit in the back of my work. I'm going to take my hook and I'm going to hook it over the top of that loop, yarn under, and pull that yarn through. Now you might be tempted to move or yarn over or under in a different way out of sync or out of pattern. Don't do that. Your stitches aren't going to work out the way you want them to. The yarn over and the yarn under technique at the appropriate time actually is quite instrumental in giving you the appropriate stitch that you're looking to get. So again, I'm going to take my hook, I'm going to hook over the top of that loop. I'm going to take the back yarn, I'm going to yarn under, and I'm going to hook that yarn, I'm going to pull that yarn through. Now, as you get the hang of doing this, and depending on what kind of hook you're working with, because you can really make this work with just about any hook you want to, you're probably going to have to approach things a little differently. You're going to have to figure out your rhythm. Again, yarn over. So this is why I really like the hook with the deep neck, right? And the lower profile. Because for me, I can take that hook. This is a little secret, right? This is something they don't tell you about in the books. They just tell you to use a big old fatty hook. And at least for me, I find that kind of obnoxious in terms of trying to get around my cording. So with this nice thin profile and this nice long deep neck and long nose of the hook, it really makes it nice to just be able to hook over that yarn and then just yarn under and just pick up that yarn easily and pull it right on through. It really makes a nice smooth movement, as you can see right here. And I just hook over. And I'll be the first one to tell you that those little books that show you how to nook, that come with those little kits, like typically those little kid kits, they're kind of hard to understand. They're kind of hard to follow. So if you're interested in this, you know, you might be interested in also looking at some other videos that are online. I haven't really looked at any other videos online because I'm I kind of like to learn straight from the book. I know it's harder. I know a lot of times it's easier to just see somebody else do it, but for me, I kind of enjoy the challenge, so that's what I do mostly. Sometimes I look up a technique online if I just can't seem to get it. And then other times I'll look up a technique online if I think I've got it and I want to see how other people do it. And so after much trial and error and using all sorts of different hooks, I discovered that this is my preferred style of hook in order to achieve the stitches I'm looking to do with the kind of smooth rhythm I'm looking to accomplish. So there we go. That's my next row completed. And then I've already pulled my cord out from the row for it. I'm going to move that down towards the end of my cording. So I'm still just have a little bit of cording left. And to turn my work. And of course this time, because we're working the back, I'm going to have my yarn forward because that's my purl stitch. And when you're working a purl stitch, you want your yarn forward. And again, I'm going to show this to you one more time. I'm going to go ahead and insert my hook from the back from right to left. And then I'm going to yarn over and I'm going to hook that yarn and I'm going to pull it through. So again, so yeah, I mean, I think I mentioned it before that I actually took a knitting class once and that was enough for me. I didn't like working with knitting needles. I mean, I completed my project. I took the class with my daughter. She still knits. I never picked up another knitting needle since, another set of knitting needles again. But I love the look of a knitted piece. So nooking is definitely something that I'm going to continue to explore and bring you tutorials on. And then of course these other stitches, you know, because clearly I love to crochet. There's so much you can do with crochet, right? It's extremely versatile. That's one thing I think crochet has over knitting. So knitting is beautiful. It has a nice fine look. You actually use less yarn when knitting. Knitting is beautiful fabric, but if you want fabric that's like super versatile, like in terms of textures and thicknesses and looks and styles and things that you can do with it and shapes, crochet really is the way to go. So I just do it all as much as I can. Right? I mean, yeah, it's a thing. Okay, so we got ahead and we did that. And there you have like this knitted fabric. And once you get the rhythm down, it moves very quickly and it really basically is knitting with a hook. I mean, kudos to whoever figured this out. That's fantastic. Okay, so that is it. We've got our nooking, we've got our Tunisian, and we got the waistcoat. I hope this was helpful. I really enjoyed showing this to you today, and I hope to see you soon. Until next time, keep your head cool, your heart warm, and your hands active. Bye-bye now.